welcome. My first question is always, how many times have you been welcomed on stage as a rock star? I guess I know the answer now.
Twice.
Twice. Thank you very much for being here. Also, thank you very much for responding a late night WhatsApp message about like 3 days ago saying, dude, thank you for selling the company now. I'm saved by the bell. But anyways, a little bit of introduction of this gentleman over here. If you don't know him, you clearly haven't done your homework. He founded Kantox. He was a former Deloitte, if I remember correctly how to pronounce this, as myself, but clearly he was the brightest one. And with his partner, Tony, and I think John is also co-founder, the CTO, co-founded Kantox back in 2011. You guys went through acceleration programs, incubation programs. You did also kind of like a, not crowdfunding campaign because it was a pledge fund with Lanthame. Probably a lot of things you wouldn't have done today. We'll talk about that. But the news are that this company doing foreign currency exchange that has pivoted a couple of times over the years. Last week, it was announced that they sold to BNP Paribas. The amount is something that's just a rumor, so to speak. And for the full disclosure, I happen to be an investor in Kantox, a really small, stupid investor, but I had to say it for terms of transparency. So welcome, Philippe. How are you doing?
Very good, thank you. After a long process to sign the deal, now it's a bit more quiet.
I was like, dude, you probably have got a lot of speaking engagements. Probably you're so busy, and you mentioned like, no, I'm over with it. I have already signed. So when did this process start? Like, how long back do we have to go? And when does this company contact you? I know they were in your cap table already, but when do these kind of conversations start? And how long was the process?
So we started working really in February. Working means we start preparing internally documentation, data, and all that stuff with an investment banker. And if I'm not wrong, we reached the first investors late March. So let's say 6 months basically from beginning to signing the deal. And why we did it, I think it's an important one. Before that, I was always doing fundraising, basically, because as most startups, you need the money, basically, to survive, because you just burn cash, and when you burn cash, at some point, you need more. It was very different now. We are a profitable company, generating EBITDA, growing fast with very sticky clients. So why we did this process? Mainly because our venture capital investors have been backing us since 2014. And as you know, after some years, they basically need to sell the stake because they need to give back the money to their own investors. And so we decided to launch a process for that reason. It's not that we needed money, it's just that we needed to give them liquidity. And in the end, we came to the conclusion that our acquirer, BNP, was in the end a good home for the future of the company. And instead of just selling part of the company, we decided to sell the company entirely.
How has this process evolved in the company? Because normally when you initiate these kind of talks, and I don't know in your situation, like in my situation I've been where my biggest client in my company tried to acquire me twice, and obviously you don't want to say no right away because they're your biggest client, therefore your revenue goes if you close the door. In your case, they were in your cap table, so I don't know what implications would it have had if you had said, no, I'm not interested, fuck you guys.
That's a good question. You should ask them. It's never easy to have an industrial investor in your cap table. So they basically invested in 2019. I think they had less than 10% of the company. Why did they invest at that time? Because we started building partnerships with banks. The first one with who we started was BNP. And so they wanted to put a bit of money in the company, which is what happened. And with the last 3 years, the partnership has worked very well. Even if with COVID, it was a bit delayed, but it has worked very well. And I think what has been very important for the deal is they understood that really we were extremely knowledgeable in our field, foreign exchange. Probably more knowledgeable than many of their own people. And they understood that we had very robust technology. Very often, large companies, when they look at startups, they think, okay, when we really look at the technology and put our hands in the code, it will be a drama in terms, in particular, of risk, cybersecurity, all that stuff. In our case, I think they got very comfortable. And so I think this is one of the reasons why in the end they decided acquiring us, because what they saw makes that they felt very comfortable.
In any point of the conversation, the bank came to you saying like, dude, 5 years ago, you were calling us banksters. That happened? And if so, what implications did it have? And you can tell the whole story.
Yeah, I mean, so when we started, the company evolved a lot. So we are 11 years old, but the first 5 years, we were basically competing with banks on price. So we are cheaper than you, so your clients should use us instead of you. And after we evolved a lot and we started building a very complex software layers that we connect to clients' systems, ERPs that basically manage risk for them. So it's really a software play now, and it's very sophisticated. In the beginning, it was all about price. And so we started really fighting head to head with banks. And at that time, we were always naming Banksters. We did a lot of media, social media. So it was really us against banks. It was funny times. And we did that because then when you compete with very large companies, oligopolies, you always need to attack where they're really weak. And prices and transparency was really their weakness. So we just decided to attack them where they were weak, which was the price.
Or their talent, or lack thereof.
Also. And so it worked very well during several years, but then we saw that on the long run, competing on price is not enough. So we started building a much more sophisticated product, and we stopped calling them banksters, sorry. And look, I think that now that I think about it, I'm not even sure people in BNP know that at that time we were calling banksters in Spain. So.
We're going to censor this out from the video, don't worry.
That's fine.
No, the reason I'm bringing this up is not to make fun of that, but I remember very vividly the first time I met him at an event in CaixaBank, at the headquarters of CaixaBank. And they had invited people from the fintech space. And there was a guy from blockchain and crypto, Alex Puig, who's also like a punk. And there was him, and there was somebody else from the European crowdfunding network. But they were like trashing the guys from CaixaBank in CaixaBank, And for me, it was like, wow, I got to have these guys as speakers in my event. So it was really good. So the reason I'm bringing this up is because in B2B, traditionally in first companies, you're like, oh, I'm going to fight the incumbents. I'm going to destroy these motherfucking dinosaurs, right? You're going to die. I'm the startup. I'm the cool one. And then you realize down the line that, maybe I need to associate with them instead of destroying them, be their Trojan horse, and then maybe destroy them from the inside. So maybe, confronting them too early and too aggressively, it's not the best idea, but it has paid off for you. Did you get involved in any kind of lawsuits back in the day, or has it been a positive outcome of all of that campaign?
I mean, what you need to do is to make sure that when you really attack them, you do it in a way that's really rational. I mean, we were attacking them on price, and it was a reality. I mean, anytime a client was comparing banks versus us, we were 10 times cheaper. So it was a reality. What you cannot do is just being aggressive and insulting them, because this in the end may be a problem. But when you are really 10 times cheaper, it's a reality, and you need really to, again, attack them where they're weak. And the price was a weakness at that time. And it changed with time. And nowadays, regulation has also evolved. So when you're a bank, you cannot be opaque on the way you charge on foreign exchange. You need to be transparent. It's really regulation. So they have evolved, and they have been forced to evolve. So you always need to change your tactic, basically, to make sure that you progress and you grow. And so we started fighting banksters, and now we are part of a bank, and that's perfectly fine.
Well, yeah, exactly. That's why it's funny how life goes in full circle. And but one of the questions I had here is, because you're B2B, right? But you have pivoted a couple of times, and your business model has changed, and you're based more on technology than you were in the beginning. You were more like services, and you had some sort of layer to reduce the fees. But my question here is, what other sorts of advice would you give to people in B2B? Because probably what you didn't expect is the long sales cycles, procurement, right? And these kind of things. What are like the top 2 or 3 things I would say, like, if you're going into B2B, be aware of these 2 or 3 things?
I mean, B2B is very broad. If you go after SMEs, so really small companies, it's very different from large companies.
Your kind of target, let's put it.
And our target is let's say mid-large. So companies with at least 50, 100 million in revenue up to 3, 4, 5 billion. So it's really already relatively large. When you go after these clients, there are many things that are very different from SMEs. They are very risk averse. So you need to show some kind of, it's a mix of professionalism, giving the impression that you are really secure and safe. So we spoke about cybersecurity, but it goes way beyond. They need to feel that you will be there in 5 years. If you build the company 2 years ago, the first thing they will think is, okay, in 2 years, maybe they're not here anymore. And this is a problem to them. So it's very hard to go after large B2B clients for startups in the beginning, just because you don't have all that. You are too young as a company. Your team is usually relatively young. You're not super professional in the way you do stuff. You are not used to really interact with more senior people in large organizations. And this is why very often in B2B tech, people start with smaller clients, so SMEs, and then they go up. Going after large B2B from the beginning, I would say it's okay if your product is not something sensitive. But in our case, it was finance. So finance is extremely sensitive. So I think it would have been impossible to start with large clients in the beginning.
In your case, your business model was based, at least in the very beginning, I don't know now, but in the very beginning, it was based on the transactions, number of transactions, right? And of course, you want to sign a really, really big client because that brings, if they transact 100 or 500 million a year, for you, it's like something that can just make your revenue, your monthly revenue go from 2K a month to 20. I was like, boom, done. However, you might line up 2 or 3 like this, but they take 6 to 12 to 24 months sometimes to implement. I'm talking to one of the companies I have invested, and they're more or less similar thing, but with B2C transactions, and they're like, oh, they've given me a green light, thumbs up for Q1 2024. As a startup, you don't have that time. How did you buy time to meet all of these long sales cycles in the beginning?
In the end, you start with small clients. Your product evolve and start really targeting larger ones. And you need to make sure that you make enough revenue from the smaller old clients, and you have also enough money from your investors meanwhile to really have the time to really sign and to go after and sign the large ones. But it's a long process. I mean, again, to go from the small ones to the large ones for at least 50% of the revenue, maybe we last 3 years or 4 years. And that's it. I mean, you cannot do it in another way. When you go after large B2B, it's funny because you always see big names and you see, well, these ones, it will be very challenging to really get them one day. But the best thing you can do is get the name of the 100 or 500 clients that are your dream clients, build the product that you think is a good fit for them, and go after these clients and never stop during years. And after 5 years, you will probably have signed already 50 of them. And after 8 years, 100 of them, and after 15 years, most of the 500. So B2B, large clients, it's about resilience and consistency in the sales process, being after them, pitching them every second quarter. And after some years, really, you will convince most of them that your product is what they need, and finally you will get them. So it's a very different thing compared to SMEs, online marketing, when it's about lead generation and basically people being extremely autonomous in the way they use your product. Large B2B, it's really about consistency and people and being resilient.
Seems like you were super organized and that your clients came in a timely fashion in exactly the order that you wanted, right? Small clients first, then a little bit larger until the big corporations came. However, the reality is like a Tetris game in which you get like the different pieces and you need the line. It's like, where's the motherfucking line, right? And sometimes you get that huge client, but you're still too early. But wow, I've got this opportunity with, say, Santander, right? And you don't want to say no because maybe they will not come to knock on your door again. However, your team is not prepared, your technology is not prepared, your lawyers are not prepared, you as a CEO are not prepared. Did you encounter the situation? And if so, how did you tackle it?
Definitely. I mean, when we
fake it till you make it?
Yes, more or less. When we made this evolution to the most complex software positioning, we did it because we had the opportunity with a large client, and And we said yes, definitely. The product was not built at all.
Classic.
I mean, never in that case. You always need to say yes. You sign and you go move forward, and then people will sweat to deliver what they need to sweat. I mean, this is the only way. You will never. I mean, you
So
cannot.
you said yes.
For sure, we said yes. You
Because
cannot.
by the book you say no because it's
no,
like, oh,
but no.
okay.
The book are not good books. the good books is you say yes. I mean, no, definitely. The good books you say yes, and what you try to do is, given it's large clients, usually when they say yes, you know that they will need 3 or 6 months to really make it work or to implement. So you have 3 or 6 months to really start. They never say, okay, we go and we start tomorrow.
Exactly.
So you have usually a bit of time. But I mean, you need to assume the risk that you will need to build the product during this short period of time and to deliver. And that's what makes difference between success and failure. I mean, if you wait to have the product ready, it never work. You never start. And eventually you build the product, and what you have built is not what they really need. So it's not really fake it until you make it, but it's never say no to a large opportunity. You always say yes, and then you build it as fast as possible.
There you go. That's a good one. Very briefly, you touch upon something that really hit home in my case. That is, when you're doing B2B, trust is very important. And a large corporation will look down at you and say like, wow, you small thing. Oh, you're 2 years old. No, we're not hiring your services. However, after 5 years, and it's the magic barrier, right? After 5 years, all of a sudden, everybody wants to work with you, right? And so I think that one of the challenges of B2B is to make sure that you raise enough capital, you sell enough, so that you make it to the 5 years. I think that's the goal line. From there on, it's I'm not saying it's a bed of roses, but it will be very more like a smooth sailing. My question for you, I brought it up earlier in the presentation, like maybe because it was your first company and you came from Deloitte, and back then we didn't know how startups work, right? There was barely no ecosystem in 2011. You went through INLEA, if I remember correctly. That's incubation/acceleration. You signed with one of your investors is Lánzame, which is a pledge fund. How many of these things you would not do for your next company? Like, did they really pay off, all of them, or?
We went through Seed Rocket too.
Yeah, exactly. That was the one I was missing.
I mean, with experience from my next company, I would say none of this will really be very valuable because you have developed the knowledge and the experience. But I always invite people that build their first company to eventually go through name it incubators, accelerator. Because in the worst case, you don't get that much value, but it never really destroys value either, you know?
But you give a percentage of the company in most of these cases.
No, in India, they were nothing.
Okay.
Lánzame, it was like an investor, normal investor, so they basically put money. And Seed Rocket, when you go through Seed Rocket, you let the opportunity of all the mentors to invest.
Okay.
So it's not like they say, okay, if you go through, you spend 6 months with us and you give us 8% of capital for free.
Yeah.
This, we were offered to do it by one incubator, and we say no.
Yeah.
And this, I recommend not to do it.
Yeah. Not even for the first company.
Nowadays, there is such an ecosystem and people knowledgeable and content available online that most of the things you will learn there, you can learn by yourself, just by meeting people and asking questions. So no, nowadays I will not recommend it at all. I see very, very little value.
Okay, before we go back to kind of like the acquisition, because I think that's something that we don't touch upon very, very often here. But there's something from the early beginnings that I think it's very important. And we don't reflect so much on this, which is when we start a company, we reach out to people who help us, right? Back then, it was probably, I don't know if people were more accessible or not, but like, how do you advise people creating companies nowadays to contact people like you to help them with their company?
LinkedIn. I have a lot of people that just contact me, and usually I answer.
But you're actively helping companies, investing?
I'm investing a bit. I'm helping some of the companies I'm investing in, not all of them, because sometimes I'm just a follower. I put money, and if they call me, I will basically give them time. But I'm not actively helping all of them. Usually, when I receive decks for investments, very often I say no, but I always give my opinion, feedbacks, and some kind of advices very quickly. Today I did it five times, for example,
Wow.
very quickly. But you have so much nowadays, so much content available online in articles, blogs, podcasts. You can learn so much by yourself. I mean, if it's your first time company and you don't spend at least 5 or 6 hours reading every week about how to really be successful in terms of anything, fundraising, marketing, scaling, sales, you're not doing you're not doing what you should be doing. I mean, if you have no knowledge, no experience, you need to acquire it. Okay, you can learning by doing and failing. I did it too, but you can go so much faster and you can do it so much better just by reading a lot and getting experience from others. And for me, it makes all the difference. I mean, new entrepreneurs that don't read, boy, I say it's a nonsense, complete nonsense.
Going back to the acquisition, one of the things that usually happens is when you're approached by a potential acquirer, then you most of the times, or is it advisable to go for an M&A boutique so that they can help you to shop around a little bit and see other potential acquirers, right? In your case, coming from somebody in your cap table, I assume that was not the process, right? You had one option, and that was the only option on the table for the entire process, right? Nope.
No, we took an M&A firms.
Okay.
We took a FT partners that in fintech, probably the number one globally. Why? Because when you have investors and they say, okay, now we want to get liquidity, by design you want a competitive process. So we had to prepare a competitive process, and we had many different kind of investors basically in the process, and many different investors bidding, including private equity firms, stuff like this. But in the end, we said, look, on the long run, what makes more sense is definitely BNP. They're already in, we know each other, we have a partnership, we know where we go with them. It's a different kind of pressure when they acquire you than when you have a private equity investor. And so it was a bit of a no-brainer, but you also want to have the M&A boutique with you, because when you choose one, then you need basically to negotiate the deal. So you sign name it a term sheet or a letter of intention, which is a very quick summary about the terms of the deal. But then between this and really the final deal you sign, which is 150 pages, there's a lot of things to negotiate. And what you want is you want the M&A firm to be the one fighting and negotiating with the acquirer. You don't want to do it, because if you do it, then you start eventually fighting with your future owner, which is not necessarily
Yeah, exactly.
very good. Even if at some point, as a CEO, you need to jump in and to say, okay, no way, I don't accept that. But you want to do it as little as possible. You don't want to be fighting and negotiating during weeks, because it's a bit of a pain, and it can really impact negatively the relationship.
That's a good point. I hadn't thought about that. But the other thing is, like, it also takes your focus, right? And we oftentimes see that entrepreneurs who go into M&A processes for 6 months or 12 months sometimes, they go into like focus mode, and they don't really help the team. So it can trickle down to the team, like the CEO or the leadership team are doing something because they're not with us. The all hands is getting canceled, postponed. And so, the team retreat maybe this year, they only come for 1 day, not for 5 days. There's something here. How did you conceal it from the team?
It depends a lot of the maturity of the company. I mean, I think we are now quite mature. The management team is really autonomous and mature. So I've been involved during the 6 months, but not that much. Okay. In the very beginning, to pitch a lot the product and the commercial strategy, it was my chief commercial very much involved. Our internal lawyer and our CFO were also involved all along. Later on, John, the CTO, was involved for all the technical due diligence, stuff like this. But Tony, my partner, was very focused on product and clients and growth. He was almost not involved on purpose, because we wanted him to be really driving the company, the growth, and all the commercial business, and not be disturbed by the process. And even me, I try to let a lot of autonomy to the people I just mentioned, because I want them also to be leader in the process and not to spend all my time on this. If you are raising a Series A and you are 20 people and 2 founders, for sure one or eventually both will be very much involved in the process. So again, it's really a matter of maturity of the company.
How did you communicate it to the team then? At what point? What was the point in which you said, like, now we can communicate something to the team? Hey, we're undergoing this process, might or might not happen. To which kind of layers in the company did you do it, or the entire company at the same time?
No, we communicated to everyone from the beginning that we were going through a process to basically replace our investors. At the beginning, we thought it was eventually going to be a deal where someone was going to acquire 60% of the company. So basically replacing investors. It was very clear that we didn't need money because
you were profitable.
Profitable, growing. So it was not a stressful process because you don't need the cash to survive. So we informed a bit people all along about the progress, but not too much because we didn't want to disturb them. The only people very much involved was the ones I mentioned in the management. And then we announced last Tuesday, the previous one, 10 days ago. And when we announced, so people knew we were going to announce the deal, but most people were expecting that the private equity was buying 60%, not that it was a 100% deal with BNP. So it was, for many people, a bit of a surprise. But you don't want to disturb people in the company, so we try to keep it not confidential because they knew a deal was progressing. But what I didn't want is to inform people every week because, you start creating stress, because a process is always delayed. In the beginning, we thought we were going to sign early September, mid-September, late September, early October, and finally it was mid-October. If you inform people every week, they start having the impression that there is a problem, it's not working well, there is an issue. Well, it's not the case. It's just that in the end, paperwork takes time. So you, on purpose, we didn't want it to have people too much involved and too much aware, at least every week, of what was happening. You want to protect them.
And how about the communication outside of the company? Because obviously, at sort of like nowadays, it's not really that great to let people know that you've raised funds because obviously they will come more like advisors and mentors and outsourcing companies from whatever country and whatever people who want to sell you shit, right? However, in your case, maybe it just makes sense because the more people talk about Kantox and they see that, oh, they've sold to this company or they have raised a large investment round, the more people will be aware of you and they'll be like, oh, I might start using them. So how did you orchestrate this PR campaign from inside to outside?
I mean, the reality that if you have a good M&A boutique, they will reach all the people that make sense. So
through them?
Yes, through them. They reach many people, and to many of these ones, I didn't speak at all. I say, you will be the first filter, you will explain the process, more or less the deal. They like it or not, they don't like it, I don't even want to speak to them. I don't want to lose time speaking to many, many people. So I want you to really filter a lot the number of investors that will start a process. And I think, making noise about the fundraising at our stage, for the kind of deal we wanted to do, I think it makes little sense.
And how about the negotiation part of the deal? And you mentioned the M&A boutique takes care of that, but you said sometimes as a CEO, you got to jump in. I assume valuation, price, certain clauses, company culture, whatnot, like certain trade-offs that you just don't want to give to the acquiring company because otherwise, people are not going to be happy in the company. Probably they acquire you, then 70% of the team fucks off and the acquiring company will be very angry at you, right? So in which cases did you specifically have to jump in or do you advise people to jump in and say like, look, you got to take a stance on this? And what negotiation techniques did you use there?
I'm not very good at negotiating, so I'm not the one that's on the table, and really trying to play and then to have specific tactics. So the only thing that count, I think, is on there are some important things where you need to make very clear what you will accept and what you will not. So, for example, it was very clear from the beginning that we were going to remain independent. It was very clear from the beginning that there was a minimum price to long story short, and below that, there was nothing to negotiate. And what's very important, at any time, you need to be ready to quit the table. If they push something that you don't like, you told you don't like it, and they keep pushing, you say, okay, fine, there is no deal. We'll do a deal next year, we are profitable, growing. Next year it will just be cheaper, it will just be more expensive, sorry. So you want to make it last, so make it last. Next year it will be 50% more. if you're profitable and growing, it's much easier to do that than when you have not enough cash and you're going to die, for sure. But you need to be very clear. Usually, I mean, there are always exceptions, but companies are sold when they're on a good trajectory. And we were on a good trajectory. So it's much easier to be on the negotiation table when your company is performing well. This is just a reality. So what I always say to people trying to raise money and entrepreneurs is the big mistake is to raise money when you need money. You need to raise money when the company is at the right time and really the metrics and everything are here. So it will be relatively easy to do it. It's not like, okay, now I need money, so I will raise money. Yeah, but maybe you are not at the right moment to do so. And I think this has happened a lot in the last years because there was free money for everyone. The party is over, and now it will be much harder to raise. So now if you are just looking for money just because you need it, it will be very challenging. So you need really to time your fundraising when your company has made a big step further and when the midterm is looking very shiny. But this you learn it with experience. So you may do the mistake once, twice, and then you have understood and you run the business differently. But I think what has happened in the last 2 years is an anomaly. One investor last week, a very big one, basically told us we were basically smoking weed in the last 2 years. What we have done, even us as investors, we have been completely crazy. And this is not going to be the new normal. Now we are going back to reality. And the market will be fundamentally different.
Yeah, because I agree with your point. Like, you had the commanding position in the negotiation because you were like, well, if you don't like the terms, I walk out because next year is going to be more expensive because we're profitable. And that's really important for people here to understand that most VCs right now are asking for a slide in the deck, which is road to profitability, right? In your case, you were already profitable a few months ago, or some months ago, but what would you advise people to apply to their companies to achieve profitability? Are there like some quick wins, like something internal changes? Obviously, there's always layoffs. We don't like those, but.
So first thing that has happened a lot last years, and I think it's always, don't build stupid businesses. Because in the last years, there were a lot of stupid businesses that have been built and funded with a lot of money. Businesses that from the beginning made no sense, were useless, were stupid.
Like what kind?
I will not give names. You know the names.
Not names, but so like, you know,
so nowadays,
pizza delivery apps or like NFT minting things.
It's an example. So 5 years ago, it was okay, we will deliver you something in 30 minutes, in 20, in 10, in 5. And at some point you say, I mean...
Quick commerce, yeah.
You will deliver something before I even think I need it. No, it's... I mean, it makes zero sense, you know, in particular when you live in a city where you have a small shop at any corner. So build businesses that are real businesses where you can make money, where there is a real need, or build things that are extremely innovative, so that can completely fail, but that can really be massive successes. But businesses that make no sense in terms of unit economics, where you will never make money, I think this is over, at least for the next 3 or 4 years. I mean, there are businesses where the more they were growing, the more money they were losing. You know, at some point, there is something that doesn't work, you know? And the other thing that I think is a massive mistake from a lot of entrepreneurs, and that I have learned after many years of mistakes, is you need to be obsessed by creating barriers to entry. You don't need to be obsessed by growing in the next 6 or 12 months. The question is how you build something at a 5-10 years horizon where there is so much barriers to entry that competition can hardly come, and you can increase prices, make very big margin, and be a cash machine. Businesses where you have very thin margins and anyone can come and compete is a pain. I mean, eventually you are lucky and it works, and then you exit your business and it's a success for you. But the reality is that you need to build businesses thinking about creating massive barriers to entry. And it's easier to say than to do. There is no doubt in this. But the obsession has to be barriers to entry more than growth. Growth without barrier to entry means you will attract competitors. The more competitors, the more challenging it will be to grow. The worse the unit economics, the worse the profitability, and everyone dies. I mean, when we started, it was a time of, you probably remember, Groupon, Groupon, Let's Bonus, Groupalia, I don't know who else, Offerroom. Basically, this industry made sense. You basically buy something with a big discount. There was so little barrier to entries that they all burned the market and this industry disappeared.
Yeah.
So I think Groupon, they decided not to sell to Google for 10 billion. They listed for 20 billion. Now they are worth, I think, 500 million and they are always close to bankruptcy. And all other competitors globally have disappeared. So they created an industry that couldn't make sense and they have burned the industry completely.
However, when is the right time to build these barriers of entry or the moat, as like VCs like to call it? Because your company at the very beginning didn't have one. You just had like cheaper fees and for a long time. And so you were, of course, there were different times. You probably knew that the banks were not implemented, but most fintechs, their only value proposition is we're cheaper than the bank. That's it. The moment the bank decides to lower their fees, you're gone, right? So how did you balance this risk in the early years of Kantox? And when did you build your first value proposition? Because it was not year 3, it was more like year 5 probably.
I was not aware of that in the beginning. We're only looking for growth. And then we really, when we started building the software, it was really for that reason. I mean, barriers to entry, usually the best barrier to entry is complex technology. When you do things that are complex and so very hard to replicate, this is probably the best barrier to entry. There are some exceptions, which is a typical business where the winner takes all, even this is a concept massively misused nowadays. But take Google, I mean, they're the biggest search engine, and so it's very hard to build another one. Or Facebook is not maybe the best example nowadays, but they were basically the main social media, and then it's very hard for another one to come because of the scale. But if you quit these exceptions that are global monsters, the best barrier to entry is very complex technology because it's very long to replicate. If someone tries to copy you, it needs a lot of money and time, and in the end, it's very hard to raise money for that. It's very hard to build a team for that. If you need 3 years just to build a product and be in the market, there will not be many competitors. If you need 2 months to be in the market because the product is super simple, you will have a lot of competitors. So I would say technology is definitely the most important one. And then there is also one, and we come back to what I said in the beginning, which is a go-to-market. If you sell to large B2B and you need years to really sign most of your target clients, it's a barrier to entry. Because someone coming, trying to compete, will think, okay, I'm coming, I will sign a lot of clients because they're already there and they're successful, but they have not really anticipated that they will need 3 or 4 years to really make it work. So the best barrier to entry in general is complexity. Anything complex is naturally a barrier to entry.
Yeah, and also price. I don't know about small, medium businesses and probably like a little bit larger, but if you really get into enterprise, they are not going to replace you just because somebody's a little bit cheaper. It has to offer significant other advantages in operations, in training, in setting up, in adaptability and whatnot. Because if it's like, oh, it's, you know, these guys are charging me 100K a year. This is only 80K. It's like, fuck it. Like we make billions, right? Doesn't really change. Can we get a little bit personal for 2 questions? Are you ready for this? Okay. How many times has Kantox been close to shutting down?
Probably twice.
Maybe
3 times if you count the very beginning, but the very beginning when you don't pay yourself, even if you have almost no money on the bank, you don't really care because you have no one to pay, you have no employees, you have nothing. So this one I don't count because it's not relevant. Just before our Series A, we were very close to fail. Luis Caviedes gave us a quick, I don't know if name it a debt. Conceptually, it was a debt. He basically wired us some money to make it another month and survive. And then when we did the pivot, it was challenging. I mean, we were never close to run out of money, but we were not sure if we were really able to make this big evolution and be successful on the long term.
And how many times have you been close to quitting the company as a CEO?
Never.
Never? Okay. So what made you continue when, in the first time, it was too early, but still you didn't give up, right? Second time, running out of money, you didn't give up. And I don't know if you called Luis Martin Caviedes or he called you. And the third time, during the pivot, it was more technically difficult, whatever, and still you didn't give up. You didn't give up 3 times. What made you plow through these situations?
Because you always need, if you have a very clear long-term goal and you're really able to stick to that, you don't really care about the up and downs on the short term. The problem is when you get too sentimental with the up and downs that you have on a daily basis, because there are a lot in startups. So you sign an amazing client, you're super happy, and 2 days later you lose another one and you're super unhappy. You know, so if you really have this long-term goal and you are convinced that you will make it, you live relatively well. The day-to-day, and the fact that there are some hurdles and some painful moments. It's really about thinking long-term, always. And also, I would say, it depends a bit also the business you have. I mean, if you are, what I have not experienced, and I think it's a pain when you are in B2C and you have like big, name it, scandals or problem with public administration or this kind of thing, as some companies are going through. This can be painful, because really if you have thousands, hundreds of thousands or millions of customers, and at some point there is big public issues, this is probably very tough. But in B2B, you don't really have these problems. So we have never been through massive downs. But I remember once it was 2018, I think. 2018, January 2018. I remember I'm lending, I will tell you differently. We had started building the software product 1 year and a half before. We built it for a large client. It was really growing very fast. Our largest client, this guy was probably 40% of our revenue. I remember I took some holidays for first time for Christmas. I went to Morocco for my wife. We come back, we land. I grab my luggage, and Tony sent me a message. He's leaving us in 3 months. We lose him. I say, oh man,
wow.
We are just back from holidays, and it's a bomb. But look, you stay focused. And what's funny is that 3 months ago we signed them again.
Wow.
So they're back.
Have you ever been afraid of failure as a first-time entrepreneur?
No, because you fail often. So you need to get used to fail. I mean, you fail on many small things, you fail on bigger things.
Yeah, but not like small things, like, you know, if you had given up, or like you fuck up big time and then your company just goes bust, and you'll be like, so how many times have you gone through and like soldiered on in like, okay, these are hard times, but I'm just going to continue pushing because I don't want to fail to these people that know me, my investors, my co-founders, my family, people who are backing me?
I think it's more, then it's really a matter of personalities, but I think the most important is to think I don't want to fail for myself, because if you start thinking I don't want to fail for others, you start creating a lot of social pressure on yourself, you know? If you build companies, in my opinion, for yourself, not for others. You don't build company for your friends or for your family. Or sometimes people ask me, okay, but when you started, what did your family tell you? I say, I didn't ask to anyone. I didn't ask for permission.
And I know, I'm sorry, because I told you like a couple questions. This is going to be the fourth one, but I'm really enjoying this part. And I think this one's going to be pretty good. It's just, as a second time, because truth be told, I'm not seeing you working for a bank for 10 years. Let's face it, or 3 years, maybe 2. Let's see what
I have a deal to stay 3 years, and then I'm committed. So believe me, I will stay.
Exactly. But however, you will create another company. I don't see you also becoming a VC, or maybe you will just like retire and become a BA. No, you will not create another company?
Yes, I will not become a VC, no.
Okay, no, of course not. My question is, sometimes first-time entrepreneurs, they are successful because they don't know what they don't know, so they take more risks. Second-time entrepreneurs, they try to cover all those risks because it's like, oh, I know this, I know that, and therefore they take less risk, and there's smaller upside for them, right? How are you going to prevent this in your case? Or are you going to be as naive as possible in your second company as well?
Second-time entrepreneurs fail less than first time, but they still fail a lot. So first time they probably fail 95% of cases, and second time maybe 60% of cases. So yeah, I mean, the experience is not a recipe not to fail, definitely. Good question. I mean, maybe the risk is then to be too confident. But I think the main risk is to underestimate that the fact that the first time, maybe the way that your timing / your product and your market fit and the team that you build was also partially luck, and you cannot replicate luck. But then when you are in the game long enough, luck comes sooner or later. I mean, very often people think that you need luck in the beginning to be successful, but no, usually you build and luck comes 3, 5, 8 years later. So you need to be on the field to be lucky at some point. If you're not on the field, luck is irrelevant.
2 quick questions. We wrap this up. We're going to open the floor for questions. First one is, because we got Carlos here who runs Fuck Up Nights, let's give him a question for him, and I will do it. What has been your biggest fuck up as a CEO in the company? Or the most expensive one? You can choose.
And biggest fuck up is always when you do not fire some people quick enough. It's always
be more creative than that. Everybody says like, I hired the wrong person, or I didn't fire this person. Something more creative. Come on, let me challenge you on that. Something else. Everybody gives that answer. It's like, job interviews. I'm too perfectionist. We all know that bullshit.
I mean, we never had a really big fuck up. I mean, something or something I did where I thought, wow, this was completely stupid. I don't really think there was something really that big. And
as an investor, maybe, or?
No, because as an investor, when I invest, I put small tickets, and I'm very conscious that it's a numbers game. So, no, not really. I mean,
Carlos, don't get him for Fuck Up Nights. Definitely, there are better people out there.
Let me think a bit. Maybe something will come.
Okay. So the last question, and it's a signature question, but you know what happens? So, people, we record these events on video. Go to YouTube channel. We've got a lot of videos. But during November 2014 and March 2015, our video provider fucked up big time, and we lost all those videos, among which there was his interview. So I don't remember the answer to this question, which is, everybody has got a useless superpower. This is a signature question. Something you do exceptionally well, but it's fucking useless, and you do it every day. What is yours?
Some things that I'm doing every day really well, but that's useless.
But it's useless. Like, I always misplace my socks. I lock my car, but I forget, and I have to come back to check every time.
I always check every time if I have really closed the door, but this is so common that really something I do every day.
I'll give you one of mine. I've got like 17.
Useless.
So every time I get on the taxi to go to the airport, I have to stop the taxi 1 block away. So like, I have to go back to check if I've locked my car at my door. Like, it always happens. At least it's just 1 block away. Always happens. That's it. That's one example.
Okay. I thought I was strange by checking I was locking the door twice, but you are way worse than me.
Oh, I've got 17 like this, or 20. So we'll make some time taking some questions, and if something comes to mind, we'll do it. All right. First off, big applause for Philippe. This has been phenomenal.